Live? Are we live?
We're live to our YouTube subscribers.
Oh, okay. Well, awesome. You guys are joining us for a live recording of the Zero to Traction podcast, or not, because we haven't done this in like 6 weeks. I mean, we've had the podcast every week, but we haven't done live in like 6 weeks due to travel and other things. And so we probably lost all of our live viewers. But if you're here, welcome. You know, that's cool. That's cool. For all of you in podcast land listening to this in your podcatchers, I bet you didn't even know we were on YouTube. But you can watch a video of this sometimes with,
Like,
with me and Cameron.
Once a year.
Yeah, well, we were doing it pretty consistently for a while. But welcome to Zero to Traction, a podcast about how first-time founders create companies that scale. Regular co-host coming at you. JDM here with Cameron Law. Cam, how are you this morning?
Doing good. Always nice to be in the studio here on Monday mornings with you.
It's good to be here. It is indeed. Happy to be in another episode, and actually talking about a topic that I think is going to be really valuable and really fun. It's one of those that's like, it's not sexy. You know, you could talk about like MVPs and development and AI, and even like, I feel like we make experiments sexy, right? You know, we could talk about hypotheses and methodology and do all of that. But here we're talking about like making big strategic moves without clear evidence. And we've talked about this from the context of like sizing your bets and so forth before, but we're going to come at it from a little bit different perspective. We're going to come at it from a perspective of what we often hear in the real world, in the Traction Lab, what we hear in the investment context as well, you know, when pitching to angels and VCs, where the next step, what we're trying to do is big and outsized compared to the evidence that we actually have in the moment. And so we thought we'd come together and bring you an episode that we are calling, well, that escalated quickly. And whew. And so we will, as usual, play a little game where we will assess some of these next steps based on what they just learned, and see if we can right size some of this, provide our usual color and flair. But before that, a little setup. Maybe spend a few minutes, Cameron. We can set this up for folks in at home.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, it's good to be back, and I too am excited for the topic ahead of us today. You know, I think the context I would briefly just want to add before we hop into the game is, you know, we believe in venture science and traction science, and everything's really this data-driven decision-making process. And so, you know, really basing our investment of time, resources based on the data that we have. And so part of the context I want to bring into the, you know, conversation here is oftentimes, like, as, you know, founders or startups, you're kind of, you know, sold this vision, like you got to be visionary and dream big, which there is this kind of element of, you have this theory of your startup, of this big opportunity that you're trying to tackle, but it all needs to be rooted in the evidence that you're ultimately seeing, and then making decisions based on that. And so, you know, as we start to see some data come in, we want to right size that based on what we're going to do next. And so, you know, we'll be diving into some of those specific scenarios, but some of those are like, hey, you got your first pilot. That doesn't mean go raise, you know, your seed round at $2 million, because now you're going to go build the full-fledged product and build out a full sales team. The evidence doesn't proportion that being the major marker that you're ultimately going to. And so just kind of want to dive into the way we're making decisions based on the data we have, but then also how that can be perceived as, too big of a, you know, milestone for maybe where you're currently at in that startup process. And so it's, you know, nothing to hold back in dreaming big and thinking of building the scalable startup, but right sizing that process, and particularly because that will set the right expectations as you raise capital, as you engage your customers in that process, versus selling this vision that isn't based on any true evidence.
Totally. And in addition to, like, you know, we talk about like evidence, and that's, for a lot of founders, starts to back up against ego and a lot of our preconceived notions. Like, I know there's a there, I just got to find the evidence for it. And so then when we start talking, like pushing back on evidence, we get this like to be a little bit reductive and I guess insulting about it. We get this like, well, just trust me, bro, type of response. And we've gotten the literal trust me, bro, before more than once. So it does happen. But what's in addition to just like this concept of evidence, it's also you're asking somebody to take a leap with you. And like, even though there's always some small amount of leap of faith that's required to take those next steps, because you're never going to have enough evidence that is like, this is obviously going to happen and we've taken all risk off the table. There's always some risk left on the table, and that's why we call them bets, because there's gambling involved here, strategic gambling, that if you play the game well in the long run will work out, right? But you are going to lose many of these bets, maybe probably most of these bets, but it's going to work out in the long run because of the outsized gains that you get in this kind of space. So I think another way to think about it is we're saying we've done X, Y, we've done Y, we've done Z. Here's what's next, and you want that to be another like a data point on the graph that forms a line, right? We've talked before in different contexts about being a line instead of a dot. And when you say like, we did X and here's what's coming next, this is another dot, are we forming an actual line, a trend line between those that makes sense? And you cannot have a data point of two. You can't have a trend line of 2 data points. That's not enough data points to form a trend line. You need at least 3 to start forming a trend line. And so as you think about what's coming next, do you have a series of data points that are all pointing in that direction, as opposed to just coming to the table with, we have this, we got these 3 pilots. And so obviously what's next is doubling down and, scaling and hiring some salespeople and doing whatever. It's like, whoa. You haven't sold it. You haven't gone through a sales process at all. And so like, we actually don't like that doesn't follow you. Like that, is that in the future? We hope so, but it's 3, 4, 5 steps down the road. It's definitely not the next step, which is probably to convert those 3 alpha pilots.
Boom. I like it. I think maybe as you tee up the game, the last thought comes to mind. I was visually thinking of kind of the, when you mentioned leap of faith, we have kind of the leap of faith assumptions in that top right-hand quadrant of where we don't have we're lacking sufficient evidence for something that's really risky for our business and succeeding. And we can right-size that even as we're thinking about like, what are our next major steps and what needs to be true, and how do we like move that from having more evidence to say this is actually a tangible next step for us to go about moving forward, and what's the chain of experiments that will help us gather that evidence as we go forward.
Awesome. So in our game, we'll do a few rounds of our game as usual. So what we're going to get from Cass is a 1-sentence setup of the most recent whatever that they did, of what's next, right? Like we're going to get this like 1-sentence setup of what's next. Like, here's what we want to do. We're going to raise to scale or whatever. That's the escalation part of it. And then their reason and justification or lack thereof for why that's the next step, where, we want to do this because we have these 3 pilots or whatever. And then the current stage. So we can also situate that so that we can apply some pattern recognition to see like, oh, well, they're a pre-revenue company. And so therefore we can also, assume the following things, or, they're actually post-pilot, or maybe they're raising a Series A. And so we can just kind of use that to hand wave away a lot of the facts, so we don't have to spend 20 minutes doing a pitch deck for all of these contrived examples. And then we're gonna have a discussion on it, but we're gonna be working toward a rating. We're gonna do our 0 to 10 scale with 7s disallowed as always, and 0 on our scale is 0 on that scale is that's just Delulu, like no justification, pure vibes, anti-traction lab in every sense of the word. 5 is probably something like, well, that escalated quickly, right? Like move too far, move too fast. And then a 10 is going to be like, that makes sense. That's a reasonable move based on the evidence. Like we follow that. So the goal is obviously 10. So from that's just Delulu to makes perfect sense on it. On a 0 to 10, 7's disallowed for psychology reasons. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Let's hop on in.
Let's do it. Let's dive in. All right. So first round here. So this is a pre-revenue AI company doing a productivity app for remote teams. All right. And their escalation is they've hired 3 full-time engineers to build out a mobile app. Their justification is that investors said that they'd be more interested if we had mobile. And their current stage, they have 300 beta users on desktop. They don't have any engagement metrics or retention data yet.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot in that sigh that you had there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they definitely escalated quickly, and I think part of the challenge, this is something you see in the industry as well, and we've talked a lot about the feedback pyramid, and like you're as a founder, you're going to get a lot of advice and ideas, and it's sometimes just couched as it's a way they're trying to tell you no without telling you no. I mean, that's really what I'm seeing here in this kind of hey, you got some beta users on the desktop. I don't like the sign that there's not a ton of engagement metrics or retention. So, I think peeling back that would be where I would be focusing my energy. But there's kind of this data point that comes in as you're looking to raise capital where investors are saying maybe they'll be more interested in mobile. And so instead of kind of running an experiment to see if, that same beta user set would actually sign up, on a wait list for the mobile to come, you kind of jump straight in and actually are building the thing without really having any evidence that that's true. And so with the intent that, cool, you built the mobile app and it doesn't actually solve the problem of their engagement or retaining these users, we've now invested even more. We've doubled down on something that was already really risky that we didn't have any solid evidence for. So I think the first piece of advice or maybe recommendation is, in receiving this kind of feedback from investors, is trying to peel back the onion of like, what are they actually saying behind that idea, so you can actually understand the risk that they're illuminating for you, and then diving into how you can run an experiment. So something that's proportional to ultimately the evidence you have at that current standpoint. But I think it's a pretty large escalation to now move into this other space, which we haven't really what the signals I'm seeing is that we haven't really solved the problem for any of these actual users, because they're not engaging or really even being retained on the desktop.
Or we don't know,
Yeah,
it says,
yeah,
right? So no, we don't have the metrics,
yeah,
so we have no evidence that
yeah,
we've solved anybody's problem, at least.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So a couple of things here. So one is you hired 3 FTEs based on investors saying we'd be more interested if, which, I mean, I'm all with you, Cameron, on that feedback is not what you think it is, and you're acting like it's something it's not. But I actually want to draw a much bigger rule here, which is never, ever, ever make big product changes based on what investors are telling you. Only make them based on what the market is telling you. And if those two things aren't obviously in alignment, then you're jumping the gun a little bit. And it's probably not gonna pay off. And you're just burning you're burning tens of thousands of dollars a month in an extra burn with really no evidence at all. And that there's a thing here, and without evidence that we're solving a problem, that we have a real user, or even though it does, I am unsure how in the long run you can remain competitive without a mobile app for a productivity app. Like, I get that, but you started with the desktop app for some reason. And if that was just because that was within your technical expertise, then that's one thing. But if you can't get anybody even to to really use that and start paying for it because you're pre-revenue, red flags up the wazoo here. So yeah, that's it. I'm out. For that reason, I'm out.
Fair enough.
So what's your ranking here? As a reminder, we're on a scale of 0 to 10. 7s are not allowed. 0 is that's just Delulu, no justification, no vibes. 5 is that escalated quickly, and 10 is that makes sense. Reasonable move. So what are you rating this? A 9?
Yes, exactly. No, so I kind of I don't think it was the right decision, but I could see where the push from investors kind of moved them over the edge on that. And again, to all the points and everything that we mentioned, I'm not saying that that's right. So I have it more from the 0 to 5 spectrum, but wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But I would say probably a 2 or something like that.
What I'm hearing you say is that this is trash, but because they were duped by investors, we're going to cut them a break.
Yeah,
that's basically what I'm hearing.
You got it. You got it. I was trying to help them out a little bit.
I mean, I'll get it. Like, it's not based on nothing, and there's like but
Not
there
a
is no
nothing burger. It's not a nothing burger.
No, but it's pretty close,
It
right?
has a little bit of.
It's like one of those low carb nothing burgers. So like you're saving on the bun, but it's wrapped in the lettuce of delusion, I think is what's happening here.
Hey, I like a good protein style burger from In-N-Out, but that's a something burger.
That's a something burger. Well, there's no side of fries with this one. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's probably a 2, here. Like it's not nothing. They did get some feedback. They just shouldn't be listening to it.
Yeah.
So,
all
right. Let's move on. All right, round 2. So this is a marketplace connecting doulas with expecting parents. All right. The move that they just made was they spent $25,000 on a PR firm to build buzz before we launch. The justification is that we need awareness before we test pricing. They have no live product. They have 40 people on a wait list and 3 doula partners onboarding. What?
Oh, that's Delulu.
That is
no.
What?
Delula or Delulu for the
Delulu. There's a better pun in there.
Well, so I mean, I think just so much of it probably like gets our antennas up, both from like the awareness, PR, investment, the building awareness before a launch, which we've obviously shared in other episodes how we feel about a launch, and then really not having a ton of, I'd be curious of the wait list and the few doula partners onboarded and what that actually looks like. But I mean, I guess the question I would ask is what is the expected ROI of this $25K on a PR investment? Even if it's okay, we're doing awareness, what makes a successful launch because of that $25K versus, I don't know, I feel like got to be a much better way to use that 25 grand to, get the right people in the door. Because I feel like, again, with the challenge we run into with these large launches is that, we get a lot of visibility, but it's not the right people that are actually our early adopters and would actually use the platform. So you're building some awareness that you exist in the world, but not maybe your customers. And so you could be much more targeted and wedged into the market by using that 25K differently. So, I don't like the use of funds there for sure.
I have nothing good to say about this, unfortunately. Here's the issue. So anybody, this is just for all of you out there in listener land, I don't want you to end up in this mistake, right? This is a contrived example, so I can bash it, right? Cass made this up. But for those of you out there in listener land, you guys got a startup, you're working on it. And if you're pre-launch and you're trying to figure out how you cross that chasm, please don't do awareness. Startups can't afford awareness. It's really expensive. The market's not primed yet. You don't know what to tell the PR firm to even do. It's public relations. Who's the public they're even talking to? You don't know what messages are going to resonate with them. There's just and you can't, how much validation can you really get from 40 people on a wait list when this is a time bound thing? There's a point at which they don't need a doula anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, it's how valuable is you have such a tight timeline when you get that wait list going. They're gonna find something else. They're gonna find another doula. If they were in the market for a doula, they're gonna find another doula. You just have such a finite timeline here. We're not launching anything despite having 40 people on the wait list and 3 doulas onboarding, and we're not actually closing the gap here. That's a whole big red flag that I'm just gonna set aside for a moment because it's not really the game we're playing here. But red flag, dude. But back to the awareness thing. When you say, what I hear if you're a founder and you're saying what we're going to do is we're going to raise awareness before we launch, you're confessing ignorance that you don't know how to sell it. And it's because awareness is what you do when you don't know how to sell it. Eventually, it's what you do because the market is primed. And if only you make them aware of your brand, then that's going to boost your sales. But that's not the case here, right? Like you can have awareness for a doula, right? I'm not sure that that's wise, but like you can have awareness for doula, but for service that matches them together, just raising awareness about it doesn't do you any good. And so all you're doing is confessing that I don't know how to close the sale yet. So I'm just going to make everybody aware of this thing. That way, when I launch, I'll cross my fingers and hope that it works. When really what's going to end up happening is I'm going to cross my legs and get down into the fetal position because I'm going to have burnt all of my time, all of my money on an awareness campaign that didn't get us anywhere. On top of which, the biggest problem with an awareness campaign, and Cameron, you hinted at this, but I would be remiss if I didn't like triple underline this, is that you have no way of testing whether it was successful. You can't measure awareness. Like that's not a thing. You're going to go back out now to pay money for another survey to say, hey, have you ever heard of us? And what good does that do you? Because if they've heard of you doesn't mean they're going to buy you. And so like, it's just like, there's no way to ever say this 25K was even successfully spent. And like, so top to bottom, Delulu, 0 out of 10, you get no points and we are all dumber for having to listen to it.
That was a full Billy Madison there.
Did I go full?
And
I award you 0 points.
And
may have God have mercy on your soul.
Exactly. And then, yeah, I was going to say the what happens next in the movie, but it's a little too real for the world we're living in. So,
fair enough. All right, let's do one more. We'll do a quick one, and then we'll move on to our frivolous thoughts.
A little frivolity.
I think we're going to need one after that second one. All right, so I did, in fairness, I did just now. I told Cass to give us a harder one, so that we can hopefully get a little bit more interesting out of this. But we don't vet these in advance, as you guys have been listening for a while know. Cass we give these in real time. I literally get them while we're recording. We design in advance and we do a test run to make sure it works. But we do it in advance or to get it set up, and then we actually fire them off while we're recording, and then I copy and paste them into a chicken scratch doc. So like we're hearing this the first time you are as well. All right, so here we go. Round 3. What Cass is referring to now is hard mode. B2B SaaS platform that automates compliance workflows for mid-sized financial firms. All right, and their move is they hired 2 full-time SDRs, those are salespeople, to ramp outbound. They started building HubSpot automations and designed a paid pilot structure. We've had 8 discovery calls, 2 LOIs, and 1 verbal yes on a pilot. Now it's time to scale up GTM. They have a functional prototype with no revenue yet, and they have 1 pilot launching next month. This one wasn't any harder, Cass. You let me down.
Do you want to kick it off, and then I can follow it up?
Sure. I mean, I'll just say like, okay, functional prototype, no revenue, and you have a pilot that's going next month, 2 LOIs. I don't know what any of the terms on that. A verbal yes, which is meaningless, and you've had 8 discovery calls. Like so with that level of thing, you shouldn't be hiring anybody. Like this, you're in founder sales at this point. So like we've talked, we had a whole episode, I think, on this is a long time ago. It might have been like close to a year ago, but we had a whole episode on this idea of every aspect of your startup, every role within the startup, every little job in the startup, it goes through the same 3-step, and it's a spectrum, but like this 3-step process from founder only, where it's like the founder is doing 100% of the work, to founder led, where you bring out some additional resources, but the founder is still leading the work and making sure that it's getting done appropriately, to the final stage, which is where it is founder less. So the founder is no longer involved in that process. And the distinction between those steps is the amount of predictability that you have. So when the founder less part is when you have 100% predictability. We know that if we put this message in front of these people, then this percent is going to convert, right? And so then you have the playbook, so you know how all that works. So there's no unknowns at this point. So we can hand that off to somebody else, and they may introduce some automations, they may introduce some performance stuff because we're not experts and they're experts. And so great, right? We've been hacking it to date. So they can improve performance, but we do know that it works. All the way at the other side, the starting point of the founder only is where we actually have none of that. And so having none of that stuff laid out, you have to be able to make decisions that impact the very definition of the startup itself. The founder's going to have to say, oh, this isn't really resonating with the audience. This other problem is really more important. So we're going to pivot the startup in this direction, even if it's a minor pivot. And salespeople can't do that. And you have no predictability at that stage because you're still doing discovery work, still trying to figure out what gets LOIs closed, still figure out what gets pilots closed. And then you're going to have to figure out what gets sales closed. So like you're in this mode where you cannot bring in SDRs to do work at this stage. This is going to fail. This is going to fail spectacularly, and it's going to be a really expensive fail. You are still in the point where the founder needs to be closing every single one of these deals. And if you need to bring on some help to do the booking of the calls and helping you with some follow-up, I totally get that. I'm an ADHD dude. Like, absolutely get the help that you need to do that, but not SDRs. You need like some sales to help augment some sales support, but it still can be the founder closing every single freaking one of these for a while. And to jump straight to 2 SDRs and building HubSpot automating what? You haven't even closed one. What are you automating? Like, you're gonna have to rebuild all these automations once they inevitably fail. So no HubSpot automations, no CRM hygiene, no like putting standardized structures around paid pilots, and definitely no hiring SDRs. You're absolutely not there yet. Sorry, Cameron. This is what happens when I tell you I'm triggered and you tell me to go anyway.
Hey, you got to jump straight in, and you went full hard mode back on Cass, I guess, here, and the scenario. But yeah, I mean, I think just the way I would sum it up was, as you look at this particular example, was, I think the biggest thing in this kind of early sales process was, one, having the founder or set of co-founders lead that effort will allow you to actually refine what the value proposition and what the product solution ultimately needs to be. Because without that listening ear, they're trying to sell a product versus have that also be discovery or learning in that process to further refine what we're ultimately building. And then that will allow us to actually then say, well, how do we take this value proposition to market? And what are the best channels to get in front of these customers in a repeatable fashion? And so we've kind of doubled down on this, repeatability component when we don't actually know what we're selling. And particularly, like, if we're thinking of the process outlined as we're doing a discovery call, we're doing a letter of intent to then an unpaid pilot potentially, to then we don't actually have any real conversion at that point. And so, like, is that going to be our sales process where we're going in that, sequence, or do we, actually not make that investment and have the founder continue to dive into these conversations that are, geared towards closing deals, but we can actually learn in that process? And where we often see this type of example come up is where you have a technical founder who isn't very comfortable with sales. And so they kind of remove that sales hat of like, that's not something I can do. I just need to hire a sales team because my solution will sell itself. I just need someone to go have that conversation. And so part of that, I probably mentioned this in a majority of our episodes, but it was like, when we say like, love the problem, not the solution, it like hopefully removes our bias of coming into those conversations where we're not just imposing this thing on our customers. We're actually understanding how we're trying to create value for them and what that actually looks like. And so then it maybe removes the, like, every one of those conversations, we have to be that transaction-y salesperson at that early stage. We're actually developing an understanding of that problem space and how we are trying to create value for them going forward.
You do say it in every episode. It's worth saying, it's worth repeating. Definitely got to do that. And like, if there's one like big, I think, sales focused founder lesson out there, is that nothing sells itself. That's, I think, as big a problem as if you build it, they will come. Where people think like, oh, I don't have to worry about distribution. If I build it, they will come. I think, once you figure out how to get people in the door, that the next big cardinal sin of startup sales is, this sells itself. And it's another one of those lies we tell ourselves to avoid having to do the hard work of testing these things out. And when what it means rather to test things out is to get rejected a number of times until I figure out what doesn't get me rejected. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we do have to give it a ranking. I'll go ahead and go first. So I'm not actually, despite my rant, I'm not going to give it a 0. So the way we did our scale was 0 was Delulu, no justification, and pure vibes. And it's definitely not that. They've done discovery calls. They have LOIs. So it's like, it's not pure vibes. It's not pure. That's not no justification. And we said 5 was that escalated click quickly, like moving too fast, too far. And so I think this is squarely in the, like, I see this all the time. This is a common story. I'm like waffling between a 4 and a 5 here because I think it's squarely in that you just moved way too fast on this. You're just not ready for that. And so I don't know. 2, if you did this 1 SDR, maybe I would have given it a 5, but they said 2, so I'm going to knock it down to a 4. There we go. I'm getting it a 4.
Yeah, I like that ballpark. I like the last kind of tidbit you put on there of like if it was just 1, that would have been a little maybe more, not that I would totally agree, but a little more right-sized for that. I think I put a lot of my own personal bias and context into this being a technical founder. And so if that person kind of helps them understand how to even document a process to a degree, so maybe it's less of it being like a full-time SDR, but someone who, is a advisor that has sales experience that kind of came in, I would have been more excited to see some of that. But I'll go with a 4 as well. So we'll have a 004 or something.
or a co-founder, right?
Right.
Like bring somebody like that on as a co-founder. And I think you're probably right. This sounds like a technical founder. All right, well, that does bring us to the end of our time here today, but zero detraction isn't zero detraction if we don't have some frivolous thoughts. So we'll do these sort of rapidly. I'll kick us off here since I can tell by Cameron's face that he's still thinking of something to say. So I got an ad in my Blue Sky feed. I am on Blue Sky. You can follow me, The Real JD. I'm on Blue Sky. I got this ad in my feed for a new tool that's out there called AkiFlow, AKI, AkiFlow. And it's another one of these tools. I used to use one called Motion, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And the basic premise is it uses like AI and other automations to not only kind of manage your calendar a little bit, but also pre-scheduled tasks. It'll automatically do time blocking. And they're building this whole system that has all these other things. And I'm the type of person that, like, despite the fact that like I've seen other tools like this, and I actually used one for quite a while, it caused issues for me. So I ended up stopping using it, that they've probably fixed because it's been 4 years, but like it was causing issues and I ended up stopping using it. But these things always like perennially appeal to me because of, again, like that ADHD that I mentioned before of like, oh, this is going to help like get the part of my brain that needs a little bit of that bureaucracy, right? And if I can get like AI sort of doing that, then, kind of, it's like, it feels right. So like I have this tab open and we're going to see how long I keep this tab open before I close it, which is the most likely thing. But remember, I've talked before about being a serial early adopter of productivity things. And so here's another one. It's on my list. It's speaking to that little part of me that says I need help, like getting some of these things like just scheduled so that I'm not constantly trying to figure out, all the different things to do. And with the one like thing that I'm always worried about with these things, which is like, yes, I do want to get tasks out of my head and into a digital tool so that I have them, so that I don't have to like try to remember them. But the problem is that creates now a task for me, and that I have to now constantly keep revising, culling that list of tasks, which is always where things fail, which is why Todoist never worked for me, because I just end up with this massive list of tasks. It's now just this database of things that's now just as messy as my brain is and doesn't do me any good. So we'll see. But anyway, I got an ad for a thing, and I'm like, I get you. So just constantly like they know me. Y'all got me. Serial early adopter strikes again. What do you got, Cam? What's your frivolous thought?
I just had it in my Wi-Fi. Oh, there, my Wi-Fi went in and out, but I'm back now. But my frivolous thought is, Josh and I are proud Whoop owners, and I think we're both early adopters of the Whoop bands as well. And so I was out. I can't remember if it wasn't last weekend, but the weekend before, we were out on the river celebrating my birthday, and I dove in, and we had Rory come in, and she was swimming, and I come out after swimming, and my Whoop band was gone. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I'm on a 623-day streak of logging my data and tracking things. So I messaged them, and sure enough, they were willing to just send me a new sensor and send it my way. So that's on its way. But the one I'm using is the one that they had me when they upgraded to my Whoop Life or whatever. This was the one that they had me share with other people for getting new users. So I'm the current user of it until my new one comes in. But it's pretty cool that they were willing to give me just a free sensor for it being lost. I said when I dove into the river it came off, and they're like, we'll give you a new one. So
it's their business. I like their business model, and it's like it's definitely like it's a very profitable business model too. Like the traditional like Fitbit is razors and blades. So you buy the gizmo, and then you pay for some subset of people pay for the monthly subscription for like Fitbit Pro or whatever it is that Google offers now. And Whoop doesn't do that. You don't pay for the device at all. You just pay the monthly subscription, and so their monthly subscription is much higher. But you also aren't paying $150, or it's probably a little bit more than that now for the equivalent device. But you're not paying for the actual device, and so then that means that they can afford to do like that amazing customer service thing, which is actually that's pretty dope, right? That's pretty dope.
Pretty dope. I agree.
All right,
I'm a proud Whoop owner.
Proud Whoop owner. Okay. Well, I am a Whoop owner as well. If that's your bag, and you can check that out. And it sounds like Cameron and I maybe both have older versions that we can give for a discount to somebody. At least I haven't given my old one to anybody yet. So if that's you, hit me up. But that is all the time we have. We are as always late. On our recording here. Thanks so much for joining us. Time is one resource you can never get back. Thanks for spending a half an hour, 40 minutes with us today doing that. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to take a moment, share it with a friend. We really appreciate it. Podcasts go by word of mouth. This is a completely free podcast. We don't have any sponsorship. We don't have any ads. We don't do anything. We just do this because it's fun and it's valuable to you guys, or we hope it's valuable to you. So take a moment, do that, like and subscribe wherever you like to subscribe, but share it with a friend. Do it right now. Share it with a friend right now. Hit pause. Share it with a friend. All right. With that, thanks, Cameron, for another fun week.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, with that,
awesome.
See you later. Bye.